So just to try to give everybody a rundown of a lot of the, no pun intended, fluidity of the situation. I'll give you kind of a backstory on the back brief on two theaters of operation where, as you are well aware if you've been watching storms that have been approaching both CONUS, the continental U.S., the mainland, and OCONUS, which is Hawaii and some of the American territories. First off, myself, I'm personally located in the Pacific theater of our operation, working out of the state of Hawaii in Honolulu, where the incident support team for all FEMA USAR assets are running operations in conjunction with the state of Hawaii and Homeland Security, FEMA USAR, covering all of the islands of Hawaii, Guam, and the Marianas. Task forces have been deployed over here as they were 2 weeks ago for Hurricane Lane and pre-positioned, just waiting landfall for what is now Tropical Cyclone Olivia, which is scheduled to forecast to hit around the islands of Maui and Hawaii County, which is the Big Island, with more tropical winds and rains to affect most of the other islands. One of the big concerns and issues here is the ground saturation of the rains that they sustained from the last Hurricane Lane that came through, some of the mudslides and cutting off of some of the remote areas or pockets of risk punch areas where people are living and stuff. And with additional rains that have come, they're forecasting more flash flooding events, runoff from the volcano mountains towards the ocean, and thus mudslides associated with that. And so we have put both military and USAR assets in position to assist those communities on multiple islands should that event come to fruition. To then turn our attention to the East Coast, where we all see Hurricane Florence coming in yesterday, which would have been about 10 o'clock in the evening, your time. The FEMA Urban Search and Rescue system in Washington got inundated with requests for search and rescue assets for the East Coast and specifically up and down the eastern seaboard. And to that effect, the risk potential, according to their liaison officers with the hurricane offices, that will be a significant impact from Dover, Delaware, all the way to Savannah, Georgia. So with that threat assessment model being pushed forward by the experts, the federal system decided to launch all 28 federal task forces and put them into theater and pre-staging them for the event. You have the option, if you will, or designee of an 80-person task force, a 35-person task force, both with support and then some quick response water rescue teams. Of that, Nebraska Task Force 1 was tasked with pushing out and activating a Type 3 task force, which is 35 personnel and 10 support people for a total of 45 persons that were activated late last night into the early morning hours as they got in processing and buttoned up and chose to hold in place and get some rest prior to departing, which they subsequently did early this morning and are en route to Raleigh, North Carolina, where the original point of arrival is set for that. They will be meeting up with additional Type 1, bigger task forces, 4 other Type 3 task forces of their same size, and 7 16-person water rescue boat packages, all to stage around Raleigh, North Carolina for response within the either North or South Carolina area. As they get closer to theater and travel throughout the day, they are in constant contact with the nation's National Response Coordination Center in Washington. Some of their orders could change and cause them to be moved to maybe a different mobilization center or staging area, but that is yet to be determined. So a very fluid event, as they say, one that had some unpredictability, and as luck would happen, it came in the middle of the night when all the requests and the FEMA administrator along decided that he needed to push all federal task forces into the theater of operations. So that's kind of right now, in a nutshell, is the situation report as we know it, or as I know it and stuff, with more to come. And if I guess I will entertain any questions that you might have that I can potentially answer.
First of all, can I ask you, does somebody not have their phones muted? We're getting a lot of background noise. It sounds like somebody's phone isn't muted. Hard to get good quality. Somebody in the media.
Sounds a little bit better, but yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to ask or recap if someone was getting stepped over with feedback.
Chief Riley Johnson. Go ahead. Chief Riley Johnson, the Journal-Star. How does this activation of all the federal units, task forces, compare to hurricanes in recent years that the task force has responded to?
Well, most notably, if you go back to Hurricane Harvey that affected Texas, it was more of a wave of task forces that went in. There was a first wave that Nebraska was part of, and then as that incident grew, or the Hurricane Harvey went off the coast, came back on the mainland, and continued to dump rain, the need basically outpaced the resources that were in theater, and so more teams were added to be a force multiplier. This is different as well, as their projection models at the national level are anticipating that this is such a giant geographical area from Delaware to Georgia that they decided they are in one fell swoop, if you will, moving all task forces into theater at one giant wave of the wand, if you will. So it's the geographic nature of the beast is causing this, because some task forces will be staying north, some that, like Virginia, that have 2 federal task forces, they will be staying in their own jurisdiction. Maryland has a task force, a federal task force, and they too are staying in their own jurisdiction, to help within their own state. So geographics is way different on this one, just being up and down almost the whole eastern Atlantic seaboard.
Chief Michael Connor with the World Herald. You mentioned that 44 count, so that's the count going to the East Coast for Hurricane Florence?
Correct.
And what's the breakdown again? Go ahead.
So that is a makeup, and I don't have the exact personnel figures, but Nebraska Task Force 1 is made up of multiple participating and supporting agencies, and at first I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of their leadership and stuff for what they're doing to assist the nation in this time of need. But there are Lincoln fire folks from Lincoln Fire Department, Omaha Fire Department, Grand Islands Fire Department, Council Bluffs Fire Department, and Papillion Fire Department are all constituting the part of the task forces going down the road now, as well as our civilian partners, where we have a physician from Brian LGH West, a structural engineer from Olson Associates, Airs and Airs, a heavy equipment operator and rigger, and then some civilian canine handlers also make up part of that Type 3 package that is currently activated.
So it's a total of 40. I thought it was 35, so it's a total of 44 then.
Yep, it's 35 working personnel, and then we are allowed to add on additional ground support, which is our semi-drivers, logistics support personnel and stuff, to be able to get the caravan down the road and then assist logistically with all their needs once they get in theater.
Chief Andrew Ozaki from Channel 7 News. Will you be continuing to stay in Hawaii, or will you join up with the team later? How will all that work out?
So my position is a little bit different. FEMA USAR has an oversight team they call an incident support team, and we are the ones that kind of are the liaisons and deal with the operations of the task forces, integrate with the local authorities and jurisdiction, whether it be state government, other federal entities and stuff like that, so the task forces can go into theater with working missions and operations and get to work and not have to handle their logistical supply, their operational assignments, and those types of things. So currently that's what I'm doing here. As soon as this storm comes past and there's time to do a damage assessment in the Pacific Theater. Right now we were told that initially we were going to potentially Guam and the Marianas, that they did not have the damage that they thought they did from the typhoon that came through there the other day, that the damage assessment shows no need for oversight. We will demobilize here on the Pacific Theater and start to transition some of not only the management and oversight team, but also the task force resources that we have here so that they can, backfill back into the States or be moved to the East Coast and stuff there. One additional caveat to that is if you are watching the weather, Texas has a storm or hurricane brewing out off their Gulf Coast and stuff that has been inundating them with rain, and potentially they are too going to get an additional storm.
I have another question as well, Andrew from Channel 7 again. I don't know if you thought about it or not, but this is 9/11, the memorial of 9/11. Is there anything symbolic or symbolism that you guys are rushing out into, to harm's way on the day that we remember 9/11?
It's very dubious and somber, especially when you have task forces here and a lot of people that both in the theater here and they're being deployed to the East Coast that were activated and deployed to Ground Zero during the 9/11, both at the Pentagon and New York. There's definitely been conversation about federal resources where we're spread out in the West, in the Pacific Theater out here in the West, as well as everybody from California's task forces through the Central, where we're at, and East Coast, all moving towards the East right now, of the propensity for a additional potential terroristic event, if you will, somewhere outside of where all the resources are located. So that definitely has been part of briefings and conversations with Washington and the administrator. So it is on people's radar. But with that, I will say that there is time, and it's been pushed out to all members to take time just out of respect and remembrance for those individuals that perished during that event, both at the Pentagon, the plane crash, as well as Ground Zero.
One point of clarification, Chief Riley with the Journal-Star again. 44 or 45 persons deploying now to the Carolinas for our task force in Nebraska?
I believe the roster I had at last was a total of 44. The 35, and I think it was 9 folks that went total. So 44 is the head count I believe I saw in the document about 1:30 in the morning my time.
That means 35 official members of Nebraska Task Force 1 and then support.
Yeah, and even the support are members of Nebraska Task Force 1.
Okay. All right. So 44 members of Nebraska Task Force 1. Okay. This is Diane. We just want to make sure we've got... Okay.
Oh, correct.
Okay, any other questions for Chief Avnet? Okay, so, hey, Chief, we'll go ahead and let you go for now. We'll be back on, I think, tomorrow about the same time, and you and I'll touch bases later on some other operational issues. So thanks for helping out, Brad. Appreciate it. Be safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.